Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to another video. And today we're going to be talking about free agency, the winners and losers of the free agency period. It was wild, it was fast, a lot happened. I will be including trades that happened within this period in this. So we're going to take a look at 5 teams that won, 5 teams that lost. There are still some free agents floating out there, the most notable one being Aaron Rodgers, most likely going to the Steelers or Vikings, from what I've heard. But I don't really think that signing will impact this list too much. So we're going to hop right into this. Let's kick it off with our first winner, which is going to be the Houston Texans, who acquired Christian Kirk from the Jacksonville Jaguars and C.J. Gardner-Johnson from the Eagles. I like both these acquisitions. The Texans were being safe in this period. They got Christian Kirk for a 7th-round pick, who I think is a good slot receiver. I think he will be good for receiver depth in Houston, and they pretty much had to give up nothing to get him. So I really like that move. And then C.J. Gardner-Johnson, also a low-risk move, I'd say. They traded away an offensive lineman. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Nobody super important on the O-line. And a 5th-round pick to get C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who I think is a very, very good safety, and a 6th-round pick. So I really like both. 6th-round pick. So I really like both of these moves for this team. I think they're low-risk moves that add some good depth, some good talent onto this team. One thing that I did forget to mention is we're only talking about notable acquisitions, notable signings. So big contracts, big headlines, you know what I mean? So and we're only talking about teams who made multiple acquisitions. So the Texans had at least 2. We're looking for at least 2. There's some teams that made some good signings, but it was just like 1 and then they were done. We're looking for just active teams who made a couple moves. Coming up next, we have our first loser, and it's going to be the New York Jets, who signed Justin Fields to a 2-year, $40 million contract and Brandon Stevens to a 3-year, $36 million contract. I don't hate the Justin Fields signing. I see what they're trying to do. He's not going to be the answer at quarterback. I think they know that, but maybe they go into the draft, take one of those guys in the 2nd round, 3rd round, and start Justin Fields. But it's just an kind of move. It's a bridge move, I would say. But oh my gosh, New York fans, I'm so incredibly sorry. Just take it from a Ravens fan. Brandon Stevens is the football equivalent of Osama bin Laden. I mean, this dude was awful last year. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not trying to hate. Just as a Ravens fan, this is what I noticed. And the Jets went out, gave him $36 million. I don't know. I don't think New York will ever catch a break. But yeah, big loss here. I think out of all of the defensive backs that you could have went out and grabbed, Brandon Stevens was not one of the better ones. And I don't know. Justin Fields is just an all right signing. I don't understand the Brandon Stevens signing whatsoever. But thank you for doing that. Our next winner is going to be the New York Giants, who is really weird. It's really weird to call them winners. I don't know. I've never really said that before. But we have the other New York team, the Giants, who I think actually did have a good offseason so far. I think they've made 2 good signings. They brought in Paulson Adebo from the Saints on a 3-year, $54 million contract. And then safety Javon Holland on a 3-year, $45 million contract. Both, I think, are really good defensive backs. They filled a need in their defense. They needed defensive backs this offseason, and I think they got him on pretty good contracts, honestly, especially Javon Holland at $45 million. I think that's a good contract compared to some of the other contracts that we've seen throughout this offseason. But I think the New York Giants did a fine job of adding some key pieces to a positional need for them. But a big loser to me is going to be the Seattle Seahawks, who signed Sam Darnold to a 3-year, $100 million contract, and DeMarcus Lawrence to a 3-year, $32 million contract. I don't like either of these signings, honestly. Sam Darnold, I think, really fizzled out and showed some flashes of his old self towards the end of the year. I don't think he warrants a $100 million contract, to be honest. Now, I do think he does deserve another chance to start, and that's a whole other conversation. But $100 million, that's money you give to somebody you think is going to be the face of your franchise, at least for 3 years. I just don't see Sam Darnold being that, especially with their all right to not good offensive line. Now they're depleted receiving core. I mean, they do have JSN, and hey, Jake Bobo is absolutely underrated. Don't get me wrong. So, I think that it's just not the best situation for Sam Darnold. And then with DeMarcus Lawrence, I mean, you're talking about a player who's battled with injuries. I think he's out of his prime at this point. No disrespect, but you gave him a $32 million contract. I don't know. I don't love it, especially with some of the other options out there. But if he can turn it around, then if you get prime DeMarcus Lawrence somehow, then that is a very, very good contract, very good signing there. But I'm not a huge fan of either of these moves for the Seahawks, unfortunately. Winner I have is the Jacksonville Jaguars. So they were a little quiet. I mean, these aren't like huge splashes, but I do think that they're safe contracts. $10 million a year for both these guys. I think these are safe contracts that that are just they fit the need, honestly. The Jaguars really needed help in the secondary. They signed Jordan Lewis, who had a good year as the slot corner in Dallas. He's had a good career as a slot corner in Dallas. To a 3-year, $30 million contract. I like it. It's perfect. Jordan Lewis is a great player. The contract isn't breaking the bank. And then you bring in Diami Brown on a 1-year, $10 million contract, whose career has overall been, oh my gosh, excuse me. His career overall has been, a little disappointing, but he had a crazy playoff run and, really showed flashes towards the end of the year for the Commanders, became a playoff hero for them, honestly. So, he's shown that he has talent, and you bring him in on a 1-year deal. I like it. It adds depth to the receiver position for Trevor Lawrence. I like it. Adds depth behind Brian Thomas as well. Like I said, these two signings aren't breaking headlines, but I think they're safe acquisitions. And in today's NFL world, with all these insane contracts that these players are getting and horrible situations, I think that deserves to have a winning label. Let's talk about our next loser. So this was a very, very active team, and you're going to see the team after this that is a winner was also very active, but I liked their acquisitions better. The Patriots went all out this offseason. I don't love it, and I'll tell you why. I'm seeing a whole lot of defense here, and that really wasn't their biggest need. They really needed to get some depth on the offensive side of the ball. I'm assuming they're going to be really aggressive in the draft, drafting offensive players and offensive weapons for Drake May. But I don't know. Your franchise quarterback's going into his second year. I think you go out and you get some young, get some skill players, get some depth to kind of help him load up for his second year. Kind of like what the Bears did last season, but not as aggressively. But no, they went all defense, spent all this money on defense, and I just don't think that that's what they needed whatsoever. You have Harold Landry the third, signed to a 3-year, $43 million contract, reunited with Mike Vrabel. I like it. Robert Spillane signed to a 3-year, $33 million contract, underrated linebacker in Las Vegas. Carlton Davis signed to a 3-year, $54 million contract. He was very good last year. Milton Williams signed to a 4-year, $104 million contract. That one's risky. I did not really like that signing whatsoever. And then they bring back Josh Dobbs for a 2-year, $8 million contract to back up Drake May. I like that one, But I don't know. Like I said, I see a whole lot of defense here. This is just not what they needed. I don't like it. I think that they could have spent their money elsewhere. But you know what? Maybe they have a plan. Next, let's talk about the Chicago Bears. So I said that we had a team that was very active as well. I do like these acquisitions better because they didn't throw as much money out there, but they also got positional needs. They know that this offensive line is absolutely atrocious. They were horrible last year, could not protect Caleb Williams whatsoever. So they went out, they traded for Jonah Jackson, who did have a down year last year on the Rams. But, if he can bounce back, that's a good acquisition. They are taking on a hefty contract, so I'm not too big on that acquisition, but I see what they're trying to do. They do trade for Joe Thuney. I want to say a third or fourth round pick. I could be wrong, but nothing crazy. I like it. I like that acquisition. Played for the Chiefs. Drew Dahlman, they signed to a 3-year, $42 million contract, center out of Atlanta, who's been impressive. I like that as well. So right off the bat, you get 3 offensive line acquisitions. I like it. They know what their need is. This is perfect. Um, like I said, though, I'm a little iffy on the Jonah Jackson. It's kind of a big contract to take on, especially with his performance last season. Um, but then they signed Dare Odeyingbo. Forgive me if I butchered that, to a 3-year, $48 million contract. I'm a little iffy on that one as well. Don't really know much about Dare. And from what I've seen, he's had limited action. He's dealt with injuries. I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but pass rush is always important. And then they signed Grady Jarrett to a 3-year, $42 million contract. I like that acquisition, that signing, because Grady Jarrett can bring a veteran presence to the trenches. And I think that I like it. I like it. It's a veteran presence to this young team. I like all of these. I see what they're trying to do. I see the vision. Unlike with the Patriots, I do not see what they're trying to do. So I think there's something to be said there. And like I said, they didn't throw a whole lot of money out there. They just take on Jonah Jackson's big contract. But I would say the Chicago Bears did a good job so far. Next up, we have their rival, the Green Bay Packers, who I am saying is a loser. You might disagree with me on this one. Aaron Banks, I'm in the middle on this signing. I don't really love it. I don't hate it. 4 years, $77 million contract. It's pretty big. But, he was pretty valuable for the 49ers, so I understand it. But it's more the Nate Hobbs signing. I don't really understand it. It's not a fit for them. They do get him on a 4-year, $48 million contract, which is good, but he's a slot corner, and I don't really think the Packers need a slot corner right now. They're going to have to find a way to use him because I don't know. It doesn't really make sense on paper, and I think they could have spent their money elsewhere to maybe another offensive line signing, protect Jordan Love, but I don't know. I didn't love it. They're not huge losers in my book. There wasn't really a whole lot of losers. Those top 3 are like my main ones, the 3 I already talked about. But I would say that if I had to label them, I would say the Packers were a loser this offseason because I just feel like they could have spent their money elsewhere. But our last winner that we're going to have, our 5th and final winner, is the Indianapolis Colts, who signed Cameron Bynum to a 4-year, $60 million contract. It's a little high, but Bynum is a very solid safety. And I like the signing. Charvarius Ward, 3-year, $54 million contract. And then they signed Daniel Jones to a 1-year deal worth $14 million. I like all 3 of them, honestly. Secondary is always important. You're going to notice a lot of my winners have signed secondary players. Secondary is very important. They filled a need. And then and they didn't really break. I mean, the contracts are a little large. That's why I'd say like teams like the Giants, I think, had a better signings, just because Paulson Adebo and Javon Holland, I think, are very solid defensive backs. So I think they got on pretty good deals. But the Colts still get 2 very good defensive backs. And then Daniel Jones, who can go in and honestly play pretty solid. I think he was in a dysfunctional environment in New York. I think that maybe we could see some flashes of Daniel Jones in Indianapolis. I don't know if I sound crazy saying that, but I think he'll be better and less turnover prone, honestly, than Anthony Richardson. So I think he'll give them solid play, but he'll probably be on another team next year. It's obviously just a bridge, whatever you want to call it, nothing crazy. But our final loser, and you can't even see the words, I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was going to be this orange, is the Denver Broncos, who signed Talanoa Hufanga. I'm sorry if I butchered that. To a 3-year, $45 million contract, and tight end Evan Ingram to a 2-year, $23 million contract. I actually like the Evan Ingram signing. So this is basically all about the Hufanga signing. But yeah, I really like them signing Evan Ingram. It's a safety blanket. It's not too big of a contract, and I think he's a good tight end. He'll be a good pass catcher for Bo Nix next season. But like I said, it's more about Hufanga. He's had a torn ACL. He's battled injuries. And I think that at this point, I think he was probably surprised to get a multi-year deal from a team. The Broncos were like really horny for him for some reason this offseason. They were really pushing to sign him, and they get him on a multi-year deal. But I think with the injuries that he's had, I know, 2 years ago he was looking like Troy Polamalu Jr., but I think right now, there's too many questions with him with his injury history, and kind of regressed in play a little bit last year. Um, so I think it's risky giving him a multi-year deal like that. But if he can play like he did in his early San Francisco days, that's a very, very good signing, honestly. It's just riskier. It's a little bit riskier. But yeah, guys, let me tell you that I might chalk all of these teams up as losing or winning based on the players they signed. They could very well prove me wrong. I could have this completely flipped. This is just my opinion, my analysis of what I'm seeing as this free agency period rolls on. That's my 5 winners and losers. Next, I want to talk about 6 teams, basically 6 honorable mentions that I don't think had a bad offseason or had a bad free agency period, but they didn't have a great free agency period. It didn't really jump off the page. And first up, we're going to have the Carolina Panthers, excuse me, who signed Trevon Moehrig from the Raiders, safety, and then Rico Dowdle. Just like I said, they're not crazy signings. They aren't bad. They aren't good. I mean, they are. I do like the Trevon Moehrig signing. And Rico Dowdle, I like both of the signings. They're just not huge signings that I guess the Panthers really need. I would have liked them to see. I would have liked to see them add a receiver maybe for Bryce Young just through free agency, even if it's someone like a DeAndre Hopkins or I mean, he probably wouldn't have signed with them. But even someone like a Deebo Samuel, who I'm seeing right here, even like a Joshua Palmer, just some receiver for Bryce Young. But I don't hate it. I don't think it was bad by any means. I think they did a solid job. Then we have the Chargers, who signed Najee Harris and then signed back Mike Williams. Didn't really like the Mike Williams contract. I forget what it was. I think it was maybe like a 2-year, $14 million deal, or maybe even higher than that. So I didn't really love that. It wasn't a super cheap contract, especially for the down year that he had. But I do like the Najee Harris signing. The Bills, they signed Joshua Palmer and Joey Bosa. I really like the signing for Joey Bosa. Get him on a 1-year deal. But with Joshua Palmer, I don't think Joshua Palmer, who got signed to a 3-year, $36 million contract, I don't think Joshua Palmer is a 3-year contract receiver, at least this offseason. I think he's more of like a 1-year deal type of receiver. So I don't know why they gave him 3 years. Maybe they see something that the Chargers don't. Maybe they see something that I don't. But yeah, it wasn't bad. I do like the Joey Bosa signing though. Pittsburgh Steelers, they traded for DK Metcalf, then signed him to a huge extension. Signed Darius Slay, and then signed back Mason Rudolph. I don't mind the Darius Slay one. It's not good. It's not bad. Makes sense. Mason Rudolph, that's fun. But with DK Metcalf, I don't know if I'm in the minority here. Shout out Key and Peele. I don't know if I'm in the minority here when I say that I don't really understand it. I don't really get it. And I'm not even saying this because I'm not a Steelers fan or because I'm a Ravens fan. But I don't really understand why they felt the need to trade for DK Metcalf and then sign him to that huge contract. They already had George Pickens. I feel like they had a good young receiving room. And another thing too is DK Metcalf is more of a deep threat. He's a lob threat and he's a physical receiver, which I think is exactly what George Pickens is. So I don't know. I don't really super understand it. They could have got Tyler Lockett for a cheap deal, which I think would have fit their needs more, but maybe they're just going for a physical approach. And at the same time, unless they get Aaron Rodgers, who knows how he'll perform next season, it doesn't really make sense to get those 2 big physical receivers when you don't even really have a quarterback that can push the ball downfield yet. So I don't know. I don't really understand it, but I also don't hate it. Like it makes sense. Probably every team would take a DK Metcalf, but maybe the receivers or maybe the Steelers. Oh my gosh, maybe the Steelers saw something that we didn't. With the Minnesota Vikings, they signed Ryan Kelly. That's whatever. Jonathan Allen, I like that one, and Will Fries, that one's also whatever. And then the Washington Commanders traded for Deebo Samuel. Not horrible. I don't hate it, but he might just become the next Eddie Lacy. Signing Javon Kinlaw, really didn't like that one, especially with the contract that they gave him, and then traded for Laramie Tunsil, which I do like that. I like the effort to protect Jane Daniels there. So, guys, that's all I have for you. Let me know what you guys think. Who would you guys change? Who do you guys think actually won? Who do you guys think actually lost? Am I a complete idiot here? Guys, let me know in the comments. If you guys are new to the channel, please subscribe. Leave a like if you guys made it this far and liked the video. And I appreciate all the support, guys. I will see you guys in the next one. Lots of off-season videos coming up. I can promise you that. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.